Yes. That person, he's busy, same voice.
All right. Well, that was a struggle. Need an extra brownie. Bob.
Yeah, definite.
Well, you certainly have a quorum.
All right, so. Good afternoon, welcome to the April 15th Road the Right of Ways Committee meeting. This meeting is being held in a hybrid format. Please note it is being recorded and will be available for viewing on the town's YouTube channel at a later date. Because we're in hybrid and we have some members of the committee attending via Zoom. All attendance and motions and votes will be done via roll call. We don't have any other visitors, but when they do come on, we'll ask them to identify themselves. That being said, let's do a attendance roll call. Lee Saperstein,
Here,
Rick Atherton,
Here.
Matt Lowell,
Here.
Bill Smith,
Here.
Nelson Eldridge.
Yeah.
Bill Greeter. And we have our esteemed land use specialist, Bob Rossi.
Thank you.
well, it says public comments. This is not a comment, but just a wry note. Today is the first day of fertilizer season. And the second note is, I sure hope you've got your income taxes in.
Yeah.
It's appropriate that it's fertilizer day and we're having a meeting, but I don't know if well jacked. First order of business is to accept the March 18th, 2025 minutes. Did everybody get a chance to, anybody didn't get a chance to peruse them? Any additions, corrections?
Is that the one where we had the little typo about the name of the committee?
Yeah.
It's fixed?
Yeah.
Good.
Do we have a motion to accept?
Sure, I'll do that.
By Lee. Seconded by
That will.
Nat. So roll call on acceptance. Lee Saperstein,
Aye.
Rick Atherton,
Hi.
Nat Lowell,
Aye.
Bill Smith,
Hi.
Nelson Eldridge,
I wasn't at the meeting.
abstain, and Bill Greeter, aye. Okay, thank you. And
Hey, Bill, quick question. What's the difference between acceptance and approval?
And endorse, let's see.
I'll have to get out my funk and Wagnall, but I think we just approved them.
That sounds great. I just didn't know if there was some new protocol.
It may be, but
I think approve is the right.
this
word.
dog hasn't gotten it, so.
Great, thank you.
So Rick, as a former parliamentarian, I've been in groups where they accepted a report to acknowledge that it was an appropriate report, but was not endorsing it. So I think Bill's comment that we have actually approved it is a good thing.
Yeah, that's sort of what I remember. Thanks, Lee.
Yeah, I do, for what it's worth, I'd agree with Lee that accepting means you receive something.
Yeah,
And
and you're prepared to put it in the minutes, but it hasn't. been
probably for these
voted on.
purposes, an approval might be what
Yeah.
you want to do, but I don't think anyone
I
would
don't-
question what you just did.
We're spending more time on this than we need.
It's all good process.
Ed Gillum is about to join us. And that was it. 4:10.
Perfect.
Oh, just on that, while we're beating a dead horse. You'll accept service of a lawsuit, but you may not approve of it.
Once a lawyer.
It's,
Good example though, right?
it's
But-
rare, but have been served.
Oh,
But-
yeah.
To take it even further, you really have to approve the minutes because you have to approve
Yeah.
the content was in the minutes.
Of course. No, you're absolutely right. That it is a distinction. You are absolutely correct.
Ed Gillum, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Okay. Let's see that, beautiful.
So, Jed, just for your bringing up to date, we just approved, accepted, and acknowledged the minutes. No public comment, and, continuation of last month's agenda. We actually have a couple of different items, and I think Bob is gonna opine on what he can. First one is a Stone Alley status update.
Yeah, I would like some input from the committee on some of these items. I'm gathering information. I'm working with Tracy to get updates. So on Stone Alley, again, things predated my existence and Tracy's. There was some work done to get a plan together preliminarily, some very preliminary discussions with folks that live on or adjacent to Stone Alley. And the purpose, as I understand it, is to work towards an easement. I spoke with Alan Grady, whose office had
Don Bracken.
Yeah, Bracken. And we had some cryptic communications, well, in the form of a bill that they had done some work. And so we wanted to get clarity on that and see if there were some handwritten notes that were involved and to see. So the bottom line is he's working on an update to a very preliminary plan, which I hope to have for this committee in the very near future. And so, but what I'd love to have the group address, or at least for my edification, is, is anything I said totally different than your understanding? Number one. Number two, is the concern or the purpose here to ensure ongoing access? Because it appears to me at the moment there is access. I've walked it and it doesn't appear to be many impediments. Is it stormwater? Is it pedestrians? Is it all the above? What is the committee focused on vis-a-vis if we're talking easements or having a plan?
It was actually brought to our attention by one of the abutters, Ms. Andrews.
Yeah.
Whose house is closest to the steps at Union Street. And there was ongoing work at the house up at the corner of Orange and Stone Alley. And they were blocking her ability to get down. And it was more than just an inconvenience, it was headed to be permanent. And so she came to us to opine on it, and then we started, the conversation at that point. Is that
Yes, formerly she's Virginia, but called Ginger Andrews. And she's a preeminent bird expert here on the island. Also the daughter of many generations of Nantucketers. And her house is the last accessible by driving into Stone Alley. And then it becomes the footpath.
Yeah.
We
encroachments on the footpath on the Union Street end.
we met with one of the abutting owners on the corner of Stone and Union.
Yeah.
So that would be the east side. I think that house is sold since then, but that owner was in agreement with the idea that the town take Stone Alley. Your predecessor, and I see, Ed, I see you. Your predecessor said, maybe we don't want to take it, maybe we just need an easement because there will be issues of maintenance and the fencing, the cobblestones and so forth. So I think coming up to where you are, preparing for an easement. Ed, no, Bill, you call on it.
so one thing yet, before you start, since it was brought up and discussed, initially at the time, the ivy on the south side had all encompassed onto the walkway.
Yeah.
The fence was
Okay.
falling down,
Okay,
and the abutter
Was-
to the south side has since replaced the fence.
Yeah.
Trimmed back the ivy. The north side ivy is still there, and the sign that used to be there at the bottom on the fence belonging to the Union Street Inn. The sign said Stone Alley. It's either in some college dorm or it's in the landfill, but it's no longer there.
yeah, because right now, that fence is brand new
Yeah.
and very clean.
Ed?
Bill, yes, there is a new owner there, and that new owner is the one that actually did replace the fence. Has actually done some landscaping work, to make the path a little bit more level and passable. I think there might have been at some time, and I'll defer to Ken Bogrant up in heaven here. There might have been some issues with liability to the town as well involved here. I think as far as opening the access and making it accessible, I think that's been achieved. I don't know, where we left off from there.
So I know where it is, but what is it? What is Stone Alley from?
It's a walkway.
Just a
Okay, it's a
footpath.
walkway up to Miss Andrews'
Is it
house.
a public way?
And
Is
then
it a
it's a
street?
driveway.
Is it a paper
Yes.
road?
It's a public way. That,
It's,
I don't know what it is.
okay,
It's a
formally,
way.
I'm not,
you don't know where this is?
I don't,
legally,
I'm not
it's in
sure
a
Tracy
butter's
does,
way.
honestly.
No, she knows.
It's in a butter's way. It's not in the town profile of public ways.
Okay,
And so
you-
our original suggestion was that it be taken as a public way. And the compromise was, let's just get an easement across it.
We asked Ken Bogrant at the time.
Yep.
To put it on the list, on the takings list,
Right,
and the DPW, my recollection is the DPW. Which is one or two directors ago, went out, looked at it
correct.
and made the determination that. Because of the fence and the ivy and all that stuff. The DPW didn't want to take that task on, number one, because they were unclear on ownership. And two, they didn't have the funding, they didn't have the staffing, and I believe that's when Ken came back and said. They were gonna go the easement route versus the taking route.
Well, yeah, and that's consistent with what I saw, which was handwritten notes indicating not a taking plan, but an easement plan.
And our question, I think, when he told us was, okay, so if we get a permanent easement and it's not maintained.
Yeah.
What do we do?
Yeah.
And
Well, right, I mean, we need easements all along the
Right.
way is what we need from all the butters.
So I think the,
most important thing with this, though, is to keep the stones, keep the little fence, and just make sure that. The owners, the butters, the butters maintain it in a way that's,
It's
the
safe to walk
ivy.
on.
the ivy, well, there's a lot of green.
yeah, so if,
Mossiness on the rocks, unless it get, it can be slippery,
can be
but that has
slippery.
nothing to do with them. It's just the way that is. Where this is, it's 19.
Yeah, no, I just
Union
went
Street.
down
Okay.
and it was, I thought.
Okay, so you know where it is now?
Oh, I know where it
it comes
is.
out on the Union?
Yeah,
Okay,
no, I know,
so we understand that the owner up closer to Orange Street, who was going to put plantings in it, backed off.
okay.
Um,
Cause it was very accessible. I just walked it a
Yeah.
couple days ago and it looked, and the fence was new.
no, it's a lovely little bit
Yeah.
of Nantucket history that nobody controls.
Was
Except
there,
for the
is there
abutters.
like an inn, what would have been back in the day? Cause
If-
at my wedding in 1995, people stayed at Stone Alley,
Yeah,
but I didn't know what that
that's
was.
the other side,
Okay,
one of the houses.
one of the houses, like
Yeah.
once upon a time. would-
Yeah.
well, yeah, Margaret Fawcett Wilson was up there
There's a,
and
there's a, behind, so George, Ginger's house, number 8 is on 8, that's Orange Street.
Yeah.
Right after the rectory.
Right,
But then she has another house. Behind, down Stone Alley, kinda whatever that is, there's a house in between that though. There's a garage. and
okay,
there's a-
maybe that was it.
That might be
Yeah.
where they stayed.
yeah, the
And then
reason,
you have, Pat, the Old North Wharf people, they have that little,
Well,
that fancy building.
Ginger owns a house on Old North Wharf.
No, I know, but I'm talking about. The, I can't think, I'll think of her name in a second. They live down that,
Okay.
at the last place on the left, that Victorian looking big building.
Yeah,
Where you can walk up from in between,
that used to be, yeah, when Mario Fawcett was,
or the whale, and you can walk up there from there.
because it was back when the social acceptance was different in terminology, where the shipwreck, where the Lightship Basket Museum was at the corner of
Yeah.
Francis and Union. Right after that,
This is true.
actually, there was a house where they used to keep the caskets in, was it Mulberry that came down, but anyway. From there, you could walk along the bank between Union and Orange. All the way to the house that Nat's talking about
Ah,
and
okay.
come down onto Main Street. Down that alleyway, and it was called the Indian Trail. So the Indian Trail came out. It crossed over Stone Alley, went between Ginger's house and that other house, and then you could get down onto Main Street. And then as people purchased properties and didn't like the idea of people walking on
Front lawn.
the town version of Wisconsin Bluff. It slowly got shut down.
Okay. Yeah, and the reason I asked about status is, one is curiosity, because I'm trying to learn all the designations, but the other is there's at least two houses that is that's their frontage, is Stone Alley.
Right.
Other than that, they're landlocked, so I just question what, what says Stone AL, like that's how the town listed on the property card.
That is correct, Bob. In fact, the man on Orange Street in question with Ginger's kind of debate or dispute, actually bought the house behind him, which was a Stone Alley address, and he renovated that house. And I think she was more upset, quite frankly. They were blocking it with some of the construction, but I think this was part and parcel of a bigger battle because she didn't like the fact that they took down some back piece of that house that she'd like to see or claim was historic, whatever, so I think it was part and parcel of perhaps a little bit bigger affair.
Yeah, okay.
So landlocked is, from my understanding, in American and English common law, deserving of an easement for access.
Yeah, and that's why it's interesting to me, and clearly we don't, frontage, it's historic, it's pre any zoning, but it's interesting what their frontage would be, and does it qualify for anything in the modern day? I question that, but
Yeah.
no, so that's fine. So that's where we are. I will get an updated plan focusing on easements, and then it will be a question of, hopefully folks are cooperative along Stone Alley and understand what we're trying to do. And
If we get a shot at looking at it, I'll make the motion
absolutely.
to support it.
You will. Yep.
Okay.
So that's what we're working on. Okay.
So, just for the
Can I
record,
ask Bob a question?
Reinhardt just
Question
joined
to
us.
you?
You have a question?
Hang on, Ed. Just for the record, Alan Reinhardt just joined us. Welcome, Alan. Thank you for attending. Okay, Ed, sorry about that. What were you saying?
I was just curious, is the entirety of Stone Alley and a Butter's Way, or was there a stub portion off of Orange Street that might have been part of a public portion? I don't recall it.
That's based on other things I've seen, that was what I was thinking, but I don't know. So either way, I think if we focus on easements, we'll be fine.
Yeah. Ed, if I had to answer your question, I'd be reading the deeds to see where the property line was,
Yeah.
Right.
but I haven't done that.
Yeah, I think I actually looked because of the lowest house. I noticed the new fence and I just wanted to know. And that I believe I looked at that deed or tried to, and it just said Stone Alley, like it used that as a reference point. So I didn't look, I think the top of the street would be more interesting what they say, where it's wider, but anyway, okay.
So just as a piece of Nantucket history, if you can find a painting, and there were many of them, watercolors primarily, done before World War II, you can stand in Stone Alley and picture the steeple of the
Oh,
church.
cool, yeah.
Now you can't because there's a tree.
True.
All right, thank you for that, Bob.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So. We'll turn to your counterpart. So the next item on the agenda is any update on the Bluff Walk access points?
Okay, well, this is my answer to that. I know that Tracy prepared and provided what I thought was a pretty thorough memo in November of 2024 on each of the properties that would constitute Bluff Walk access points. So I'm gonna ask that you provide me with more detail on specifics or questions that aren't answered in that memo or addressed, because it wasn't clear to me as I prepared exactly what the pending question is. vis-a-vis
Bill, can
access
you
points.
attach it to the minutes?
Yeah,
I'm gonna look at Rick. Because Rick you were on the select board when those access points were proposed to be taken. And my recollection is that one or two of them, there was resistance and we deferred. So we took some and we deferred one or two.
Frederick Way was eliminated. Was one of them. Frederick Lane or Frederick.
Is that the one near
I-
Soros?
Yes. Yep.
I think there were, Andrew was having discussions with Soros about between him and his mother
We
and whether
got
the way
something
should be
from them on
moved
another
down.
one. We got something from the Soroses on a different way and got rid of that one, because the Frederick one was never constructed, like it's just trees. You couldn't even tell
Yeah.
that it was there. It was there on paper. Which I didn't actually know that.
Cause that's what I did
I worked out
last
there.
fall. I made the list from the map and parcel book, so.
Yeah,
All right, there's a right of way between this lot and this lot.
Yep.
Then it jumps to, and then
Yeah.
we got one here and here, yeah. He's still got it.
so,
so I have Snooky's list on a little note here.
love it.
What I'll do is I can add this into a Word doc. Just so we
Sure.
have it to compare. And Snooky, do you wanna add a dialogue to this? So that when we add this to the minutes, there's some that identifies what it is?
I don't know how.
No, just tell me and I'll.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so I'll call you and you can tell me.
Yeah.
And I'll put it in.
Yeah.
All right.
I
Then
mean,
I'll send it.
Are we concerned about anything out there, or are we just trying to kind of finish the whatever isn't or is done or not? Okay. Because I know that the one at Doc Martens, what is that? You know what I'm talking about, what's that,
Has the name, but he.
right by Mrs. Curry is, what's that one? That's got, that's all done. There's a 10-foot, they still have their parking of those two houses. And there's a marker, that's
Yeah.
all set. I'll think of it after we talk about it. I'll remember what I'm talking about, what street it is. And then with the one at Emily Street, by Richie's old house, isn't that one's clean and.
Well, right now, the one by Emily Street is a mess.
It is. Oh, no,
Tuscan
the
has
house
been-
they lifted up, I
Yeah.
know, I know that.
Tuscan has been working. there
I
all
know, I
winter
didn't
long.
mean that part of a mess, I meant
Yeah,
in the legally,
Yeah.
legally.
Oh, no.
No, they lifted that house, I know.
Yeah.
I know,
put cellar under the house
Yeah.
and the garage.
yeah.
I think part of the issue here is further to that great report that Tracy gave us. Is the need to follow up, because certain of these things were in certain kind of orders of being done, and to find out what happened after she gave us that report, I guess.
Okay, yeah, I will do that. I think some of it is, and that's what this committee is in place to do, is to give recommendations as to what the grand strategy is. And, I think there may have been in the past more action taken vis-a-vis takings without having in place the grand strategy as to what you do after you take the property. And I think the question is, you know, does a taking put you in a better position than without a taking? Does a taking without an easement put you in a better
Yeah.
position than you are now? So I think those are all things that have to be thought about, because to really have the access I would suspect you're thinking of,
With,
you need
with-
more than just a taking, it may be.
with credit to Alan,
Yeah,
he put a lot of markers in designating those that we confirmed had been taken, reassigned to the abutters with an easement
Yeah.
remaining. And then I helped him on one or two more,
okay,
to make sure that the, markers are in place.
This,
right,
this-
but an easement has to be negotiated, it has to be.
Oh, yeah, these were all done.
Yeah, so that's where it really, so I think, you know, those things really go together. The
Right.
taking without the easement aspect, really, you have that now. You
Yeah.
have an area that is traversable,
Right.
frankly. So it's really, if you want the easement, then that's the necessary
Yeah.
part of it. And I know there have been efforts to have those discussions that may not have been entirely,
Okay, so
cooperative.
two things that resulted, we've had a long history of dealing with the Bluff Walk. And residents who live along it continue to be disturbed by people who are not behaving well on the walk. And we've given our advice. We're not the enforcement agency, but the police will also say, we can't assign a patrol officer there full-time. We might stop in and look. And that includes things like the commercial operators who have sightseeing buses. And they have been asked not to do that. The other issue was determination of the proper license on stairs.
yes.
Since they cross,
Town property.
well, the Conservation Commission controlled town property. They need a license.
Chapter 91.
And some of them have, some of them have not. Again, that's an enforcement issue.
Some of them need to be renewed.
Yeah, but again, chapter 91 is a Jeff Carlson issue.
Yeah.
It's like,
Well, and also the overlap is, as far as that goes, is we have a doc that Jeff had submitted to the town several years ago that lists all those crossings to the steps and where they stood permit wise. Some had expired, some never had permits.
Right.
And so, you know, there's nothing that this committee can do about it. It's just more information that goes in the category of the status of the Bluff Walk, I guess.
Hey, Bill,
Rick?
it's Rick for a second, just, I think there is something we can do about it, because we, as a committee, when we had the Bluff Walk Committee years ago, identified a number of those. Jeff Carlson re-identified them. And for those steps from the property or the bluff walk down to the water that do not have a conservation permit or a license from the town to cross over town property, it would seem to me at some point, not the highest priority in the world, but we ought to have a system where over time those are accomplished. Even if it means asking the town to just gently write a letter and say, "I'm Mr. Jones. By the way, would you help us negotiate a license so you can use our property appropriately permitted?" So.
Yeah, no, I agree. I wasn't disagreeing, Rick. What I was saying was basically the best we can do is because we're an advisory committee, is to bring it to who we work for, which is the select board, and say, this is something that we've found, we've noticed, or remind them of Jeff's memo or whatever. But the enforcement and any action taken isn't gonna be from us, because all we can do is identify and pass it along.
Well,
So-
I understand, but we have Bob with us now and he can help us sort of work out the best process to do that, so.
Right, but again, I mean, is this committee doesn't feel it can communicate with Jeff Carlson? Is that what I'm hearing?
No.
Okay,
No,
so why don't
that's
you
what I'm
try that?
Because he doesn't always answer us.
It's.
So what can Bob do for you?
I mean, it's I,
What can Brown do for you? Okay,
I
so
don't
so
think
how about
anyone's
if you put something together on the chapter 91? And I can certainly work with you to, you know, again, updated.
Yeah.
Hey, this is from 2 or 3 years ago. Can we get a status? And that would be, I think, a reasonable first step. I hear what you're saying, but, and I'm looking for ways I can help support the committee along with Tracy, but again, you know,
we
we have
don't need
to,
to create work.
we have to figure out a way that
We
makes
don't.
sense, but having it updated and documented, and that's the,
I mean,
and I'm not ignoring the hand up, but also with the list, again, what would help me and Tracy would be, okay, Tracy and Bob, thank you so much for the memo. You don't have to be that polite. But these are things that weren't addressed, we still have questions about, or even though they were addressed, and at least it will be teed up in that way for a more specific, you know,
Yeah.
update that I can give you, and then we can have a discussion about what the next steps might be in some of those areas. So that would just help me to have something more tangible. I'd appreciate that. Thank you. You had at least a hand up, Bill.
That,
Everybody's made the point about the licenses, that came up obviously in Tracy's memo. And it was kind of, left in a way that was the start of a process, so to speak. So I guess, as much as we can push that process along, that would be great. There's also, in some cases, it might lead to enforcement action by the, you know, the select board or whatever, because some of the people that have licenses or had license or had never had a license have actually pushed their gates and fences to these stairs with the private on them and whatnot, actually into what is really the layout of the bluff path. So to me, down the road, that's part of a more serious issue, I think, is that there's efforts for people to choke off the bluff path to where there's certain areas that you can walk only single file versus, you know, when it's, you know, at a minimum, probably 6 feet wide, you know, kind of thing. So that's part and parcel of something that might turn out to be enforcement down the road. But yes, I think if we could just have some, the November memo doc was a very good start, but I guess, you know, it's one of those starts that identified the problem. It looked like it was something going forward, but if we can help to push it forward, that'd be great.
Yes, perfect. Thanks.
and you've been anointed now, because Rick said that, you know, now you're one of us, so.
Excellent.
So by
Excellent.
default, you've joined the Motley crew.
Right, right.
So, because that was so easy. Any more questions on this or updates from everybody before we move on? Encroachment policy revisions, we have an existing encroachment policy that, at one point was talked about being revised, redone, tweaked. Do you have any status on that?
I don't have any dramatic changes. What I have is, I mean, for folks in the room, if you want, I have some copies of the policy. It's on the website. It's not that long. You're welcome to look at it. You're familiar with it.
You have to search for it. It's under the
Yeah, it is.
DPW menu page.
Right. So one thing, and this is part of my initial orientation to this position because of the fact that we do have some involvement in the Click and Fix program, which is run by DPW. I'm sure as all of you know, there's now a website where you can go on either anonymously or with attribution. Make note of something you notice that may or may not be within, it could be potholes, it could be encroachments, it could be all kinds of things. Send it in. There's an internal process where it's sent to the appropriate persons to follow up on. Tracy and I are not running that program. We are not the focus of it. But the extent to which there are things that might get into more of whether it's either, you know, a policy or this person says it is their property and they can do what they want, or it's a private road versus public, or questions, we will get involved. But again, it's really the DPW is managing and administering the program.
Go ahead, keep talking,
okay,
because
so-
I got a lot to say.
So,
Okay, so sorry to
When
open
we
a
get
can of
time
worms.
to talk.
But what
No,
I
it's
did note, when I look at the encroachment policy,
You got
which hasn't been updated substantially since 2014. Is
since we updated it.
that what you guys
Joe,
did?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Oh, then you guys know everything
get-
you're doing. Okay,
you-
so I think certainly it's time to be looked at.
Uh.
The purpose of it, this makes more sense to me now, because the purpose is to keep the town-owned right-of-ways open to the public. So it very much dovetails with your mission, your vision statement.
Depends on what it is.
So anyway, please look at it, come with some ideas. Tracy and I are open to, again, it would be things we'd have to talk to DPW about, but if there are things enforcement wise or encroachment wise, you know, we think we also think there should be more outreach, could be a video, could be social media, just to put it out there for folks who show up here only for a handful of weeks a year. These are the rules. This is what you should be thinking about. Here's
So
some do's and don'ts.
before Ken fell ill, I said, Ken, there's something in here about an encroachment committee. Who's on it?
Oh,
And he said, I think I am.
Okay.
And it was basically between him and the then director of the DPW.
Yep.
And yes, you're quite right. The DPW sends out the encroachment letters saying your hedge forms a barrier to a good sight line. This is unsafe. Could you please trim it? If you don't, we will and charge you.
So just on following on your question or statement. The last I'd heard, as far as encroachment letters. When Tracy, unless it's changed, which you could tell us if you know.
Yeah.
When Tracy first came on. The process was the DPW was running. The encroachment issues, looking into stuff. But I know, for example. Absolutely, the Sconset stuff that we looked at on Sankaty Road on the corner there.
Yeah,
With the hedges and all that stuff where. Not only was the hedges there was stakes and all that stuff. That it fell to Tracy to write encroachment notices to those folks. So I don't know if that part's been rustled from the DPW or if they've signed off on it, and so Tracy's doing it. Same with, I believe. The cliff. Off of Cliff Road up to the turnpike there.
yeah, I know, the walk down to the beach.
No, not there, off of Cliff Road. Up to Turnpike, is that? It goes to Barber-
It's called Sherburne Turnpike.
Sherburne
Yeah.
Turnpike.
Are you talking about Lincoln Circle area? Is that what you're talking
No, Sherburne Turnpike, somebody put a notice in Click and Fix about. It looked like it came from us. It came up, it was the plantings
about? Oh, yeah,
and the stuff that had gone on that house in the corner.
right.
And the ticket was finally closed out and said an encroachment letter had been sent. To those folks and blah, blah, blah. So I don't know if that got taken back to the DPW or if Tracy's still doing that or what. So I guess there's a question there as far as. And at least in my mind is, is it still a split territory? Are you guys doing some of it?
Yeah, again, we don't see encroachment as a responsibility of real estate specialists within the town of Nantucket Town Administration. However, clearly issues come in through Click and Fix where it all comes through. Nothing comes to Tracy or I directly, no matter what you're complete. If you say, I'm upset about the state of real estate, it's not going to come to us directly. It's gonna go to the first review within DPW. And then if it is, there are some, what I'll call a judgment call, just in the sense of location. Is this a private road? Is it a corner of a private road and a public road? Is it an area that's been traditionally frustrating for somebody? That's when we will get the referral into our office internally. Hey, guys, take a look at this, hey. And again, it's been a great learning experience for me, because what I'd like to, I'm a lawyer by training. I love rules, right? I'm a rule follower. I love things set out, so there's no gray here. This is an encroachment. I took out my tape measure and you are hereby encroaching. What's interesting, and you folks know this from the work you do, and sometimes gets frustrating, when I'll talk to the very experienced people at DPW, for example, they'll say, well, look, Bob, that's all because I came in saying, why is this complicated? Why is there any confusion on anybody's part about encroachments? If you have a tape measure, but understood, right?
You haven't
Understood.
heard my story.
Oh, well, yeah, but.
We'll answer that question.
I take it back. That was
not
rhetorical.
Arizona,
That was
Bob.
rhetorical. I know.
We're not
So
Arizona.
anyway, other than the politics of it, even just the, I learned some
It's-
interesting things, and folks, they'll say, look, Bob, let's say we go to a place and it's a clear violation of the policy, maybe, but it's a foot or two into an area that it shouldn't
John
be.
Miller's hedge.
But what we all know, and probably the reason that encroachment kind of sort of exists, other than, negligence, is that if it wasn't for that 1 or 2 feet of quasi encroachment, folks would tend to start parking vehicles there instantly, creating much more of an encroachment because there isn't 6 or 8 feet for
Then
them
the
to
rocks
go.
come out.
And then the rocks come out. And
Instead of going on the beach. you're
right,
putting the
so we
rocks
get
in the
very
rock
nice
space.
letters from people that are very frustrated, and some people get screaming, some people get very, from a trust,
Yeah.
really fancy letter that probably cost a lot of money to draft.
Right.
They hired somebody to draft this letter, wonderful letter, but it essentially says, our neighbors across the street who happen to be contractors of some kind, is a common thread, park their vehicles, their own vehicles, it's not work being done, it's their company van, truck, pickup on our side of the street in a public, in a park, in a place that isn't banned parking. And those people are, they're solving any encroachments. They're out there with hedge trimmers, making sure that parking remains available for their vehicles. So again, it runs the gamut, and this, like, as that's, the stones come out, that's a hazard. So it's a fascinating area.
I'll take you down a different avenue.
Yeah,
The original draft, proposed by Joe Marklinger, included licensure of historic structures. Because almost every set of Friendship steps in Nantucket is encroaching on the sidewalk.
Friendship steps is where I was starting, so
Okay.
now I go to my second thing after Lee's done.
Okay,
Stole one already.
so what he was proposing is that historic structures be licensed
That was our new policy,
and,
Joe,
okay.
town attorney,
on a has-been on a sale. It's a good idea.
town attorney reporting to the town manager said this is too complicated, which is why you don't see it there. It was in the draft that we submitted to
Yeah.
the town. And I can send you a
I
copy.
think it should be done.
So,
That could be
on that
revisited.
same note, straddling the hedge, somebody just, and this may end up in your bailiwick after the click and fix ticket is submitted, because the person, they asked me to do it and I asked them if they would do it themselves, but if they don't, I will do it for them. And it's Williams Lane. And so we're painfully aware of the test one-way Pleasant Street
Yes.
Yeah, that,
debacle.
yeah.
And part of it was to establish pedestrian access down, right? And so this person said, well, what about the existing sidewalk that's on Williams Lane? And so I said, well, what about it? And because generally when you're driving in that area, you're dodging oncoming vehicles and bicycles or whatever, so I don't really sightsee. But the other day, I was a passenger and we were stopped. So I really got a good look at the sidewalk on Williams Lane. And there is indeed a sidewalk with a curb, not a tar curb, but a regular curb, granite curbing. But the bushes from the houses on that side of the street come over and you would be hard pressed to go single file sideways on what you can get past those bushes. So I said to the president, we'll put in a click and fix, and the DPW can go out and trim those back. So it kind of boggles my mind that we've gone X number of years trying to solve pedestrian access and a sidewalk on Pleasant Street where there is none. And yet we have a sidewalk on Williams, which is impassable because of shrubbery. So at some point, I would hope that we prevail and say, let's spend $20 before we spend $200 and deal with some of the stuff that's currently there. So this next week, there will be a ticket in click and fix come hell or high water on that section, and it may end up with you because maybe the property comes right to, who knows?
Bill, you got a hand from Ed.
Ed,
Bill, you're indeed correct about a lot of that. And a lot of it is landscaping, and it's landscaping of people who planted the hedge, quite frankly, not on their property ever at all. And it's grown into the road layout. But some of the issues that these neighbors have with the construction vehicles, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I know this is kind of a out of the box, probably a broader thing than the town's ready to do. But if the town painted yellow lines in areas they do not want parking, and then people park there, then they're subject to obviously breaking the rules, breaking the law, parking on a yellow line and get a ticket or a fine. That would eliminate a lot of the stakes, rocks, 4x4 posts all over the place that you see in front of people's houses that are there purely to keep construction vehicles and whatnot from parking there. In fact, some of them came about after the people renovated or built a house themselves and had their construction vehicles there for a year, maybe a year or so, and then decided, well, we don't want that now that it's finished. And those things came up, these stakes and whatnot. So I mean, the town figured out where they wanted parking.
The rules. Ed, I've got to check the rules, so I'm gonna look at Nat. I think if a vehicle has a commercial license plate, it may park on a yellow line.
I don't think that's correct.
No, I mean, no, a delivery vehicle has a certain amount of time and all that kind of stuff, but not just because that's a commercial plate, no,
Okay,
no. And I don't know that officially, but I would bet.
I know
99%
officially
right.
a
I
commercial
don't believe it.
vehicle, a commercial registered vehicle can block a street.
Yeah.
For X number of
Certain amount of
minutes,
minutes, that's correct.
15 minutes, 12
Yeah,
minutes,
it's
whatever.
crazy, but that's true.
Because actually I know
Crazy.
somebody came out of the right next to the sheriff's office, Chestnut Street. Because the trucks deliver to those restaurants every day. And they pulled up behind the guy and said, I need to get by. And the guy said, well, it's gonna be like 15 minutes. The guy says, well, you can't block the street for 15 minutes. And he goes, oh yeah, I can, and I will, and I am. And so the guy, he went off on his delivery, and the guy got out of his vehicle and went into the sheriff's office. And Donnie Mack was there, and some CSOs, and the person was told, they can. So you either have to back out into the traffic on water. Or
wait.
enjoy your cigarette while you're waiting.
okay.
So, I don't think they can park in the yellow line though.
So we could talk about this, we could probably talk about this at another meeting. Cause there's a lot of things to say, but Bob over here definitely needs a refresher on all this, so. Variable width roads. We have layouts that are all askew, there's nothing normal here. Okay, nobody at Farm Road's 30 feet. Right, 30, like, hello. Why? Cause it is, it shouldn't be.
It went to a cow barn.
It is, and it's one of the most heavily used roads The mailboxes are in the way, there's no place, it doesn't make any sense that road is 30 feet, but that's what it is.
Which, sorry, which one?
Nobody had found. I'm just using some examples. The thing that we talked about with the, in-town historic stuff. All right, telephone poles.
Put them back.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, we should not be punishing people
Garden
that
Street.
have encroachments that are not causing a problem of some kind, like Gosnell, that got cut back, okay? Pulling out of Gosnell was like pulling out of Wind Street,
Mhm.
okay, not long ago. You could not see anything, okay? That got fixed just a while back. Pulled the hedge back, and of course, the properties have all sold and that's all changed and whatever, but
Right.
New
but
Lane,
it's that
Westchester.
spot there.
Yep.
Okay? But there's a lot of stuff that is not in the layout that looks like it is and it acts like it is, but it isn't. There's a lot of stuff like that. So when Joe Markinger, when I say Joe, I'm talking about Joe Markinger, sorry about that.
Yep.
He was pretty heavy-handed on this. He wanted to be more enforcement, and then we started talking about it. And you start finding out that you really kind of can't do it in every instance. Now we have, and this is Alan's little thing, he likes to talk about the 75 takings. My father was around on that. I can't believe they did that. That was like the biggest mistake, and it's a huge mistake. So
Matt,
all those
just-
roads,
Just for the record, explain what went wrong in
They-
75.
all the takings that were done that year were done for just the traveled way.
Oh, okay.
And it only got fixed. How long ago, Alan, was that? Like 8 years ago? It got fixed? 10 maybe?
Seems
It's not
like it,
that
yeah.
long ago.
So some of them weren't fixed just last year.
It's the most insane thing. So what that did is kind of made it like, I think Halbert Ave was one of them, Alan, right?
Mm.
They think they kind of had rights up to the pavement. And all the markers and the rocks and the things start coming up. Then sprinkle systems started. Now,
Yeah.
sprinkle systems are kind of a new thing here.
Yep, yep.
Sam Swayze, he knows all this stuff.
Yeah.
So there was one made out of copper,
Mhm.
if I remember right.
Wow.
So anyway, so nobody was putting all this ornamental stuff in the road edges until, let's just say, the last 25 years. I'm just gonna, whatever, okay? I don't wanna get into dates, but it's in that area. And then everybody's doing their thing. Now, a lot of it is a public benefit. Some stuff people do is better than the town. I can show you one at 18 Mill Street
Mhm.
that they did what the town should be doing. They put the curbing, they got it all set, so water's not washing out. It's actually nice. So you gotta find.
Right.
Each one needs to be looked at on an individual basis, in my opinion, just like second curb cuts. You have to look at things and what it's doing for the community, but it isn't, what could be done to benefit. A lot of these property owners will do something for the community to benefit both.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You
Yeah,
get them to
yeah.
do it. So it's a complex issue, okay? Washington Ave and Mattocket is 50 feet. Mattocket Road is 40. That's all you gotta know.
Yeah,
Makes no sense at all, but it's true.
No, the judgment is, that's what I was trying to say,
Crazy.
that's what I was trying to say earlier.
Yeah.
I think the judgment has to be part of any policy, and
So-
it really does.
I'm gonna add one more that we might look at another meeting. There's a beautiful new sidewalk on Atlantic Avenue that abruptly ends at two beautiful town trees, forcing people to either walk on the
But
road.
it was like that before,
I know, but now we have the new sidewalk.
but.
And so the
Don't get me
question,
started on all that.
the question
Give me a
is,
month.
the question is simple. Is there a remedy that doesn't force people to trespass on somebody else's yard?
I'm back on poles. I'll take I don't care about the trees, cause they end up coming down. The pole gets replaced in the same spot
Yeah.
every time. And it's like, why? And that, to me, the pole issue is way worse than the tree issue. I know, obviously on Pleasant, especially up by Summer Street, there's a couple of bad ones.
Yeah.
In that little section between Sanford little thing there, whatever that road is, goes out of the
Like
candle
Gardner
factory.
Street too.
Yeah, and it's just Gardner this summer is gonna be a problem if that doesn't get resolved in front of Lucy Dillon's house. You gotta be able to drive on the sidewalk. So there's a lot of things that are gonna happen with this, with the sewer thing, putting this stuff back like this.
Yeah.
There are things that you have to be able to do on Nantucket to drive these streets that is not conventional. To keep them historic, you have to drive a certain way. You can't
Yeah,
just
oh, totally.
pretend that the road's 20 feet wide. Like it just isn't, you know?
So out of personal experience, I'm replacing a side mirror at the parts department at Don Allen.
Yeah.
And the clerk says, oh yeah, he said, I sell a lot of these
I bet you do.
where people high five on Gardner Street.
Mhm.
Well, so anyway, in my opinion, like I like that registration thing. Now that was Joe's idea. I'm back on the
Friendship.
licensing of historic or traditional. I mean, I don't know if that's the right word to use, but some of it is-
Architecturally necessary.
there's a lot of things. I mean, there's something else I wanted to bring up as a next agenda item idea I wanted to talk to you guys about. Is these pull-in parking spaces. They're not a curb cut, but it's like they're all over the place. They're in Sconset, they're in Albert, pulling over to the side, like 40 Baxter has a big one. As opposed to having certain sometimes a curb cut is worse than a pull-in, depending upon where it is, okay? And we approved the one on Bank Street a few years ago, because there's like 4 of them on Bank Street, and there was a, you know, an opposition to it, ends up being the perfect thing.
So
'cause it doesn't
basically,
affect the traffic.
what I'm hearing you say now is a driveway you can pull in, but then you have to back out.
No,
Well, no, that's
oh,
the
a
driveway.
driveway, yeah, sorry.
But in a pull-in,
You
you
just
pull
pull
in
in.
and you pull out.
And it's
Always going
partially
forward.
in the layout, partially in the person's
Some new
property.
ones on Cliff. Once again, after Turnpike heading
Yeah.
west,
It's
where
just
they
a
put-
good,
they put in a couple of them with the Belgian blocks and all
Yeah,
that. And
yeah.
so it's funny because it's the same people that put fence posts or the metal poles up because they didn't want anybody parking in front of their house.
yeah,
And then they finally figured out, oh,
Yeah.
they made,
better.
they put in the Belgian block and made their own.
This is right, individuals do this.
Yes.
Yeah.
How do
And-
they
and
keep other people out of there?
Well, they can't.
It's. Okay.
It looks like.
This
a
is,
dri- it looks like a
you know what I'm
driveway.
gonna say to that? The answer to that is, don't advertise it, and no one will know about it, just like the bump
Well,
path.
it looks like a.
You can advertise.
You just
It
kinda,
looks like a parking spot.
yeah, but
So,
nobody.
so the push for that particular one I'm talking about,
Yeah.
the push comes to shove for that location will
Yeah.
be 4th of July. When everybody parks on the cliff and they
Yeah.
walk down to the jetties for pops
Yeah.
or
Yeah,
whatever.
It's just,
And that's where you see all those stakes really come in, people put them up ahead of time for no parking. So this person has built this. Now we'll have to make sure their cars are there. ahead
But,
of
but again.
Bill,
you're
you've got
using-
to catch up to
Yeah.
reality. The police mark off every road from Cliff Road down to Cobblestone Hill.
that's,
You've got to park in Ed's neighborhood
I'm
on
just saying,
Garrymore.
as far as- I'm just trying to bring up traditional Nantucket things that work. Way before we had rules, way before we had permits for these things, way before you had to have a CO sign off to get your curb cut done, and you couldn't get a CO without your curb cut signed off. True.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So. What happened on Main Street a couple weeks ago, that got denied, I went by there and looked at that.
Mhm. I'm saying the second.
I'm
the second.
I'm a
driveway.
curb cut lunatic. Because they're all different. And some people in town have like 4 parking spaces with 1 curb cut. And then somebody comes in for a second curb cut that has 1 barely primary. And they got a barely secondary curb cut they want, and the person that has 4 parking spaces is mad.
Right.
That is when I kinda decided like, okay, we have to change the conversation with this curb cut thing. Because we have depending upon where the house was built. Before cars were even here. That affects how these things come about and how you have to look at it. And the only reason I'm bringing it up is because it's kind of in that encroachment mindset of what is really an encroachment can be beneficial.
Right.
To the traveling, the public use or walking
Yeah,
or
so-
whatever it is.
But that's a good, again, a
You
good
have to look
example
at it
of
that
part
way.
of, one of your solutions is a clear encroachment.
Yes. Depending on what, it's
Because you're
better
in the
than somebody
public way.
backing out.
I understand,
blind.
right, but that, so
That
that, so
is
again. I think-
totally
right,
legal,
so I
but
think
it's worse.
with whatever changes we come up with or updates or revisions, I think this group
And-
should keep that in
and
mind.
this
That
also-
there's gonna be exceptions that we have to work with, so again,
Right.
we
Moving right
will, a
along.
perfect policy will be
Good,
impossible.
you've got a very classic encroachment on 84 Baxter Road. You got the edge of the grass, the
You brought that up
utility
once before,
poles.
I remember that.
a flagpole, and then the asphalt.
So-
And 4x4 sunk in the ground so that you don't park on her grass.
You also brought up Gardner, and so it'll be interesting, now that it's open to the traveling public again.
Asphalt's, it's going up to 3.
With the new
or 3.5.
raised curving,
It's gonna be lower, because they're raising the asphalt. But it's 3.5, is what I'm told.
so I just saw.
It's a little
3.5
high.
inches, okay.
I just saw somebody this past week. Who now that they traverse that area a lot, and right now with the new curving with the edges.
Yeah,
Um,
it's not new, it just looks it, but it's the same curving.
well, there's a section there that it can't be, because they climbed up where they normally
It might
climb.
be 1 or 2 pieces, I don't
And,
know.
yeah, and well, they had the misfortune of climbing there.
So
And,
they blew a tire,
oh, they sliced it right over.
unbelievable. Alright, yeah, no.
So anyway, so
I'm not
that's,
saying
that's
that.
one of the issues with the new curving
Right.
versus the old curving, so.
It. Not gonna say.
So
nothing about it.
Matt's gonna open up a tire shop just to. do
No,
it.
I'm just, it's hard to do things the old way now. Yeah, it shouldn't be, but it is.
All right, so what is your closing on the encroachment policy? What are you,
I have nothing to add other than if you, I've heard some specific recommendations, some of which were made before, if you can reduce those to writing or put together something for consideration, again, understanding that I don't make
Write this
all the
down.
decisions.
so somebody,
Just,
But having things in writing
Yeah.
that, I can talk
Bob,
to
just a
people
little bit of
about.
personal history.
Yep.
I got to Nantucket as a tourist in 1976. And I thought, wow, these horsehead hitching posts are really kind of a neat little bit of history. But of course, they weren't. They were stuck in the ground to keep people from
They should be
parking.
bike bollards. Now, get rid of them on Indian, bring them all to Federal and Center Street as bike bollards. That's my solution to those.
so,
16 Pleasant.
so on the policy question, does anybody
Check out that drive.
want to take on,
He probably was there 100 years ago.
noting down any
Bring him.
Oh, good.
possible changes or additions or whatever?
Part of the challenge, Bill, is that a lot of the things that Bob is working with have to do with enforcement and inspection.
No, I understand that, but you were just saying, if the policy needs tweaking, he's asking us to identify.
Yeah.
If I understand it right.
Yeah,
correct?
yeah.
Identify areas of the existing policy to be looked at for changes, and so he needs that in writing, so I'm asking if in fact this is a concern of the board, somebody other than the chair needs to step up and say, yeah, I'll run with that. Otherwise, until somebody brings it up again, this is the last time it's gonna be on the agenda.
I think it needs to be, again, an individual basis evaluation of more than one person. It
Yeah.
can't just be.
Oh, no, I agree,
somebody
somebody, it's
saying,
gotta go to
You
somebody.
have to have a different pair of glasses to look at some of this
Oh,
stuff.
yeah, I
And I'm
agree.
not even just saying ROH versus everywhere else, and we get. I mean, go up Duke's Road right now. I hadn't been up there in a while, all the way to the end, till the other day. There's aprons in the dirt. Okay? Driveway aprons, but there's no pavement or anything, and it's like, wow, this is crazy, But they're doing it because of water in some of the cases. But you go up there and look at this, and it's like each place is getting changed one at a time, and before you know it, you have this, so. It. Again, I mean, looking at second curb cuts, because we do it planning, I go look at every one.
Yeah.
Because they're nothing the same, every one of them is completely different, and you have to look at the practicality, is it a one-way street? Is it wide enough to, because of the traditional thing that we do, we put a yellow line across them a curb cut, why? Just for fun? Depends on how wide the street is, depends on if the person can back out with a car on the other side, like, not everyone needs that, it just depends on where it is. So you gotta look at that, you know, again, on an individual basis, whether it's a primary or secondary, it doesn't matter.
No, I understand all that. So my question was. Bob has asked for any. If in fact, this board thinks there's encroachment policy revisions needed. Somebody needs to spearhead that project, gather input from this board. Put it in writing and we can submit it to Bob. The chair is not going to do that. So, if somebody wants to step up and do that, fine. If not, then from my point of view. This is, until it's brought up the next time, this is the last discussion we're gonna have on encroachment policy revisions.
Okay.
Ed,
Bill, I know where you're coming from. What I would suggest is that everybody review the encroachment policy in 2014 and see if it needs any revisions.
Yeah, that's. Can somebody, can you email that
And
to
then
them?
if it
And-
does
I
need
don't-
revisions, then we.
and send it to whom, Ed?
On the web.
I know.
And send it to whom?
No, we discussed it, we put it on one more meeting, we review it, you know, and if we have collective revisions, then at that point, we write something and send it to Bob, or, you know, however, you know, I think that would be the way to do it. Right now, we're kind of all over the place on these kind of encroachment things.
Okay, so we put it on the agenda. I'm still gonna be asking the same point. If in fact we do that, and that is somebody is gonna need to take on the note-taking for that particular item.
Right, well,
Part
let's
of
put it
the
on one more
issue
agenda. I
in
think.
2014 was town council saying you're dealing with a lot of property values, property ownership, and they may not be appropriate, which is why it got pared back.
Yeah, and again, I'm not promising you a different result.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that there may be aspects of it. That, I mean, what Tracy and I are focused on is, we probably could do more outreach, certainly.
Sure.
To really, because there are folks that may be oblivious or say they're oblivious, so having more outreach in today's social media, you can do more things, people might see it, at least it's in the back of the mind.
It may be that
That's
one
an
of the public journals, either the Inquirer Mirror or Nantucket Current or whatever, would like to do a little pictorial essay showing examples of things that are not really legal.
That's the idea for the outreach.
Warren's
is
Landing
you
Road.
can do this, you can't do this, you can do this, exactly.
A rock.
Right.
Ed,
So if you
I
have.
think the outreach-
You can,
I think the outreach is a great idea. I mean,
Yeah.
we might review the encroachment policy and decide that, quite frankly, it's nothing to do with the encroachment policy itself. It's all about enforcement, period. So, I mean, it might come down to, like a lot of things on Nantucket, the enforcement level, and that'll either get done or it won't, but maybe we could push the, you know,
Right.
push the button one more time on it or something. So.
You can talk about this forever. I have
yeah,
to go.
okay, so
Yeah.
where this is gonna stand now is.
We're gonna
That's it for
review them
now. If somebody
individually.
wants to have it on the agenda in the future.
Yeah.
Let me know, Going forward, the agenda is gonna be made up of items that are brought to me from the board. The chair is no longer going to be picking these things up myself. So if I don't get, written suggestions, then we'll have a very short agenda going forward. I'm sorry to be PIA, but,
No, it's all right.
that's how it goes, so,
Okay.
thanks, Bob.
you're welcome.
So moving on from that very easily addressed item. The next thing on our agenda is, do we have any status updates on the Rosa Right of Way Committee? To my knowledge, we haven't heard a thing.
Bill, I'd like to hear more about progress in the long-term transportation plan. There are 20 or 30 projects that are there in the appendix at varying levels of either funding approval or design. And it might be nice for us to comment on priorities. And if we can get things moving. Now,
You have to get Mike on to give you the
yes,
update.
no, I understand that.
Yeah.
The forthcoming annual town meeting
Tom
has
Nevers.
got some of those. Tom
Well,
Nevers
that
is a
took
good
a front
example.
seat to everything.
Um,
So.
I think there's money for Pleasant Street. There's
For
a,
what though? You talking about the failing section piece?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I
Okay,
think what Rick, this agenda item, I was not about that stuff, but I do, so I'll just give you my quick, I talked about this last meeting, or the meeting before. I've talked to everybody, you guys know that, I just never stop talking.
just
A lot of
recall
people.
there.
Okay, oh, and wow, how's it going? So. I think that there's a future. And we got the future guy over here from Matticat that I never met before. That knows, that's good, I'm glad he's here. With, as I said, the bike pedestrian committee, this committee. Right, traffic safety. Whatever that is going on right now, because that's not a select board committee,
correct,
but it's vital in a lot of the things that we talk about. And REAC, which is, you know, you've been on that since the inception, and it is a fantastic group. But a lot of the stuff that Right Away was doing before is somewhat finished or not as important. I don't even want to say that. It's just as important. It's just not. There isn't as much of it, okay? So I think there's a future for this committee to become something slightly different. I love this coordinated review stuff. Having to look at things, and Rick and I were on the sidewalk and street committee twice. And it's two different evolutions.
but
That was a
my
good-
recollection, that is those were ad hoc committees
Yes, for,
created because of the contract that was gonna disturb the street.
it was the first phase of the sewer clay tile Orangeburg replacement in town. It started, and I can't remember exactly what the second reason was, but it was something to do with that. Because Kara was at a notepad, and we were walking up Fair Street and Traders Lane, and I remember that like yesterday, but that was the second version. The first one was Dirk and Sarah Octay, and I can't remember all the other stuff, but anyway, so. I'm not worried about this as much as I was a few months ago, because the people that are involved in these other committees are like Tracy, getting established. I talked to Drew a lot, so you know, okay? Drew is gonna be great for this island. But he's young and he's trying to get his feet into the right shoes and all that. And I think he talked to me a little bit about this the other day. And having some new, I don't know if I say position or committee that looks at things, we could call it the street and sidewalk advisory, we could call it something else, but I think it can come out of this. I like that stuff. I think that stuff's more important than a lot of the things that we talk about, because that's what people see, benefit from. Like Prospect Street, Alan probably has had nightmares about Prospect Street for the last 10 years. I have brought up Prospect Street to everybody in the last like 6 months. What are we doing about Prospect Street? We're just gonna leave it like this? That road needs to be tweaked.
It's,
And now we have
it's one
those
of,
3 curb cuts right at the edge of pavement that are,
not,
You know.
if we had to pick a street where there is a disaster with women and strollers, it's Prospect.
Prospect has been dropped like it never existed. The North Mill Street situation, we all understand that. I see Bernie Bartlett right here in my head coming into our meeting a long time ago. I used to drive up there. He wanted it open. That was nuts. Now it is because of the development.
Yeah.
There's 2 different engineers on that project. It's a
Just
very
very quickly for
complicated
Bob's benefit.
situation.
The same person owns both sides of North Mill
That's
Street
why.
and hung a chain across.
Oh.
That's what he's referring
But
to.
now we need, it's supposed to be one way in only. Once the project is complete, but there's a lot of people that work in there that don't know any of this stuff. And they think that's the shortest cut. So we're driving out into the worst possible situation you could ever imagine. So. Drew knows about this, everybody knows about this. This isn't like anyone's specific fault, but it has to be addressed. So anyway, Lee, you
Matt,
know all about this stuff.
the challenge for a DPW director, anybody who's appointed to that position, is they have to be technically sound.
Yeah.
But at the same time, an excellent manager of people. It's one of our largest, other than the schools, it's one of our largest divisions.
Yes, and when they get a complaint
Ah,
of a hedge being planted on town land, and the town manager says, oh, don't make waves in Wisconsin, they pay too much in taxes, let the hedge stay where it is.
Can't do that.
Yeah, yeah, but an old original hedge or a new hedge?
It was a new hedge,
It was new? Okay, I'm just checking.
yeah.
You're talking to the hedge guy for 10 years. So I'm just asking. Yeah.
Well, I go back too far in Wisconsin for a lot of people.
You're the last person that remembers everything. Chucky.
Alright, so, to wrap this up, at this point, we have no status update on Roads and Rights Committee, future, whatever. At some point, there's gonna have to be a discussion with this committee, with the one person, the one group that we report to, which is the Board of Selectmen. Currently, we don't report or come into the office of the DPW regardless of ongoing conversations. We aren't part of Park and Rec, we aren't part of anything. We report to and serve the will of the select board. If they want to change our role, they certainly have the ability and the right to do so. But damn it, that should come from the select board.
Yeah, but
So, Matt,
they're not gonna think like that.
well, you have to think like that because,
When
you know, we just got through talking about the sidewalks.
Yeah. I think it
And
has
how
to
this
be,
committee was very involved in the sidewalk and the funding.
Yeah.
But when we brought up sidewalk issues
I know.
on Center Street, we were told it's not our
I
purview.
know,
Right?
I
So-
totally, I understand
So
that.
then, if it's not our purview,
What he's talking about
so anyway, it's just,
is the.
what is the status of this committee?
That's automatically coming out of the taxes for the sidewalk stuff. That was, I started all that.
Okay.
And now it
That's it.
dissipated off, you know.
So, and until that changes, this, you know, we'll chug along here. Not knowing what the thing is, and we're gonna hear things from other department heads or whatever, so. I guess that's how it'll stand until it changes, so with that being said, we can move on. Any other business or members' comments? Ed?
I understand your frustration, Bill, because you're right, there should be more definitive, our role should be more definitive, or at least we should have a catbird seat or a seat at the table on things that aren't maybe directly our purview. Though that affects the topics that we deal with. I want to just, this is not old, this is old business, and I'll be quick. It's late. I don't want to belabor people. What is the status of Franklin Street? Whatever happened with that? Does anyone know where we were on that?
What's still not officially taken. Because I think it was because no one wanted to ruffle lots of feathers over there.
I think, the answer to Ed's question is it's on our advisory memo called potential takings.
Right.
Uh,
Whatever.
There seems to be little will in the town to deal with that, but it's in the memo.
There seemed to be something in the works because I know I talked to Ken about it, but obviously I can't talk to him anymore about that. So there was something going on where we pushed it as far as we could on our end, but there was something was supposed to happen or not, but I don't know that anything did.
There was, for Bob's benefit, there was confusion as to ownership. I think at one time Franklin Street, which tees into New Lane alongside of New North Cemetery,
Yeah,
okay?
okay.
And so it was deemed to be public until it was checked and it's private. Now, the town on this particular street is in a butter. And we have issues with people parking in front of the steps leading up to the cemetery. And so from another committee that Alan and I are members of, we're concerned about having access to the cemetery because nobody wants to park on New Lane.
Can't,
Not really, no.
no.
Yeah, there's no room.
Most
And
dangerous road on
so
Kentucky.
to Ed's question, it's on our list. The cemetery commission would love to see it taken, but there are abutters who don't want it taken.
Okay, so without getting, I gotta go, but without, people think if a road is taken, Bob, this is Nantucket stuff, like.
Right.
Millbrook Road is private,
Yes,
and if it's ever taken, they think this paving truck is like right behind the taking. That's what they think, that's how people think, okay? That road, they think probably that it's gonna get, improved or some other thing that no one wants,
Yeah.
okay? But in reality, it was about the abandoning cars parking there and going to the mainland and leaving the car there for weeks, like that kind of stuff.
Months.
Well, okay, whatever. That was happening on Woodbury, same exact stuff was being said. We don't want these roads to be public because then the people be using it as the new A&P lot annex, okay? Which is true. I mean, people, that's what they think. Personally, I like that. When we went and looked at Franklin, that hill, or whatever you want to call it, that topography of the cemetery from where that road is solid soil. There could be a couple of a stairway or something made there for people to be able to walk up to the cemetery without going out into New Lane.
There is one.
Is there now? I don't
Yeah.
even know.
I
I
know
thought,
it's
I didn't know
been
there
there
was.
forever, but it was,
Okay.
it was obscured, it
would
was
be-
obscured with
But it
vegetation.
could be,
DPW has
Kept.
cleared the
okay,
path.
so they're doing the work there, then, even though it's not a public road, okay,
So
good.
last
No,
night,
but because town owned.
the last I heard, Ed, if I remember correctly. Somebody here might remember the same thing, and that's when Ken was around. And
Yeah.
he said they were in negotiations
Right.
with an abutter. To come up with some sort of issue, and he couldn't talk about it because it hadn't come to fulfillment, so if you
That's
go
exactly
through.
right, Bill.
Focus note to a passed along,
That
and
was
maybe
not,
sort of notation in there.
So we had
discussion
Meter
with.
Street got done without anybody saying anything. Meter Street was never a real road until about 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And no one said a word.
Any other
Oh, anyway,
past items?
okay.
If none, the next meeting is May 20th. Here at the
That's voting day.
trailer, we could do hybrid also. So that being said,
Change that meeting.
if there is no other
That's
items,
that's election day. We might want to change that meeting.
the what?
That's election day, May 20th. Just saying.
Anybody
Might
want to
not be the
change the
right
date of May 20th?
I don't know.
Town election. Yeah.
Is that right or wrong? I'm just making a statement, that's all.
Anybody running for office that needs to go whole time?
Okay.
All right, at this point, we'll flag this as a date if we change it, as long as it's not posted.
Okay,
So we can just wait till then.
all right.
That being said, we have a motion to
Motion to
adjourn,
adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Aye,
seconded by
All right.
Lee,
and everybody voted aye.
and quickly, roll call, Alan Reinhardt,
Aye.
Lee Saperstein,
Aye.
Rick Atherton, Nat Lowell,
All right.
Bill Smith,
Aye.
Nelson Aldridge,
Aye.
Ed Gillum,
aye.
and they'll read it. All right, thank you,
All right,
everybody.
guys, thank you all.
Bye.